In an older video, before my plastic surgery, I said that Skyrim was the first game that grabbed me. It wasn't the first, that's right, I lied to you. What are you gonna do? Go ahead, leave a dislike. That still drives up engagement. Oh, what, you're gonna leave now? I already got your AdSense, bitch. Fuck off. Listen, guys, to be honest, I've never played a game in my life. All these videos are written in a Taiwanese sweatshop by old women that love Doom Eternal. Yeah, you're an idiot, and the world is a lie. I'm sorry I'm the one that had to tell you. JFK did 9/11. Hannah Montana is actually Miley Cyrus. And Elvis Presley did not die, and instead went on to have a successful hip-hop career. And the first game that really grabbed me was Grand Theft Auto 3. After a lifetime of my dad refusing to buy me a console, he gave me an iPad when I was 14, and unbeknownst to him, Rockstar had released Grand Theft Auto 3 on the App Store during its 10th anniversary around a year prior. It's actually now approaching its 20th anniversary. Fuck, I'm old. Grand Theft Auto 3 was the type of game you would want to commemorate. A landmark title that launched Rockstar Games to the top and was instrumental in popularizing the sandbox game. It was not the first open-world game, but it showcased what the cutting-edge PS2 hardware was capable of when it came to the genre. I don't want to get all game theory on you here, like I promise this will, I'm not going to get too crazy, alright? But Grand Theft Auto 3 is not actually the first Grand Theft Auto. Several numbers precede 3. These numbers are, in descending order of value, 2, the secret famous YouTuber number that I'm not allowed to talk about, and 1. Grand Theft Auto 1 and 2 had already been developed by Rockstar, although at the time they were called DMA Design. They were released on the original PlayStation, PC, and some weird box I've never heard of before called the Sega Dreamcast. I'm pretty sure it never existed. I really should not use Wikipedia as a source. These games saw a moderate level of success and were also open world, but as I'm sure you can see here, they were lacking in a certain dimensional department. While there are many great 2D games, it's a perspective that really lacks in terms of immersion. A 2D game can draw you in, of course, but it sorta has an issue feeling lived in and believable. That's not to say it's impossible to make a 2D world feel that way, but it's definitely a big hurdle to clear. The challenge and goal with Grand Theft Auto 3 was to take all of the freedom and diversity of the earlier 2D top-down games and bring it into a living, breathing 3D world, while fully thinking through the implications of having everything in 3D. I see you there, video game marketer, banging your head against the keyboard and trying to come up with some drivel you can use to sell your trash. Oh, your world is living. It's breathing, isn't it? If you want to continue to have those adjectives apply to yourself, I suggest you stop applying them to your thoroughly unremarkable open-world games. I particularly hate it whenever I see the adjectives living and breathing applied to Ubisoft games. Ubisoft game worlds are not living and breathing, they are stale and marketable. Shut the fuck up. Grand Theft Auto 3 set out to fulfill a promise that has been made endlessly since its release. A living, breathing world in which you can do anything. So, in 2001, 9/11 happened.
I was waiting at a table and I literally saw
I'm not just being an edgelord. This actually really messed with GTA 3. GTA 3 was originally going to release on October 3rd, and no one wanted to see little Timmy cooking pedestrians alive in a New York-inspired setting less than a month after watching 9/11. I don't want to get political, and I really don't want to get controversial, okay? But 9/11 was bad. And children should not do 9/11s. GTA 3 being set in a fictionalized version of New York City necessitated some changes to the game, although these were minor for the most part. Cop cars were retextured so as to resemble the NYPD less, the flight path of one of the in-game planes was removed because it looked like it was flying into a building, and a homeless NPC, named Darkel, was going to give the player various terrorist-y missions. One of these missions involved flying a plane into a stadium.
Yikes! That's gonna be a fucking yikes from me, holy shit.
According to Rockstar, these Dark Hell missions were originally going to be in the game, but were actually cut several months prior to 9/11. I will make no money from this video. That's because YouTube actually loves 9/11 and wants to encourage children to do 9/11s. 9/11! Some people simply don't believe this explanation from the developers. Why? Shit gets cut from games all the time. All you people throwing out crazy theories that Rockstar is lying about cutting content for normal, everyday reasons? Listen, you need to relax. Sit down, have a nice cup of tea. Or perhaps hot coffee. Grand Theft Auto 3 was delayed for 3 weeks. Instead releasing on October 22nd to the PlayStation 2, then later coming to PC and Xbox, and then still later to the ultimate gaming platforms, iOS and Android. Grand Theft Auto 3 is, out of all 3 Grand Theft Auto games from the PS2 era, the least fondly remembered. San Andreas has a considerable meme presence, and is still compared to modern GTA games in terms of its gameplay features. Vice City was a stylish 80s blast with the best music of any Grand Theft Auto game. If you disagree, that's fine, you're just wrong, we're all wrong sometimes. But while Grand Theft Auto 3 hasn't been remembered nearly as fondly, and nearly as often as its peers, it's by far the most important of them. To me, yes, because of my personal history with it, which I will discuss more in depth later, but its impact on the industry as a whole was monumental. It established a new subgenre, was the best-selling game of 2001, and the second best-selling game of 2002. It was second after Vice City. It was controversial, influential, cutting edge. It was the game every kid wanted, and every parent was afraid of. In other words, it was a Grand Theft Auto game.
From ABC News, this is Nightline.
There is nothing new about worrying over the impact of media on children. One generation of adults after another has viewed with alarm and risen with righteous indignation over the potential damaging effects of violent comic books, rock and roll music, graphic movies, obscene lyrics, not to mention the wholesale impact of the internet and all that's contained within. But of all the worrisome material swirling about out there, Grand Theft Auto 3, one of the most popular, technically sophisticated, and graphic video games ever designed, may have given our generation of adults something new to worry about.
You're an efficient killer. I like that in a man.
Experience has taught me that a man like you can be very loyal for the right price.
I see nothing but good things for you, my boy.
Grand Theft Auto 3 makes a great first impression. You see, every face was actually motion captured, which was cutting edge for the time. I get it, you're confused, these lips just flap up and down. Well, that's because Rockstar couldn't afford to hire actors for this cutting edge technology, so they elected instead to use this tech on garbage cans.
But my hands are all messed up, so you better drive, brother.
The opening is concise. You were robbing a bank, but you ran into an 18-carat run of bad luck because the game was actually rigged from the start. This cutscene involves some bald guy who's not important, don't worry about him, getting broken out of a prison convoy. You, and a guy by the name of 8-Ball, use this opportunity to escape, but his hands are all messed up, so you better drive, brother. Yeah, this game is branded onto my frontal lobe. From here, this moment, a formula was set that would eventually lead to mothers all over the world getting their credit cards stolen for shark card cash. You work your way up from small-time thug to king of the criminal underworld. I feel this progression is best encapsulated by the second mission, where a small-time mobster named Luigi tells you to beat up a guy and steal his car by leaving a note. That is a power move. That's like telling someone to commit arson via a dick pic. Although the note-leaving thing actually continues well into the game, so I think it may have been a cost-cutting measure. Garbage cans are expensive. But the whole working small-time jobs thing for petty cash at the beginning, that's how these games work. You ain't shit, but as you progress, you go from small-time thugs telling you to commit assault via a note, to Yakuza kingpins telling you to steal all the gold in Fort Knox via a note because, come on, have you seen the garbage can prices these days? GTA 3's power fantasy takes time. A decent sense of progression is something I always look for in a game, and it's always a shame when the story doesn't acknowledge the player going from total bitch to god. And Grand Theft Auto has always done well when it comes to this. You can kill an immortal dragon god in Skyrim, head into town to sell his fucking bones, and the guards will still talk to you like you're fresh off the boat from Pussyburg. You can't even buy a pistol until you're a few missions into Grand Theft Auto 3, and an Uzi until a few missions after that. You're entirely locked onto a tiny island at the outset of the game. And on this island, the only cars available are pure ass. This island, Portland, was designed to be reminiscent of Queens and Brooklyn. The second island, Manhattan. The third island, New Jersey and/or Long Island. I haven't been north of the Mason-Dixon line, okay? They're interchangeable, but fucking Yankees put chili on their burgers. It's a fucking war crime. Hey, stop! Restricting the player to a small section of the overall map that gradually increases over time was a staple of Grand Theft Auto until the release of 5. This is something I'm actually a pretty big fan of, as it allows Rockstar to really sell the whole rags to riches thing that Grand Theft Auto has usually got going on. The first island the game always locks you to is usually ghetto as all hell, so you can visually see your ascent up the food chain. As I said, all the cars on the first island are ass, because you're shit. You don't get easy access to sports cars until the second island. Unless you go to the auto dealership near 8 Ball's garage, there's a Banshee on display there, it's sick. Don't tell anyone I told you that. They'll break my fucking legs. Grand Theft Auto games usually reward you with ridiculous tools so you can perpetuate an increasingly more ridiculous level of slaughter. That's the deal. That's how these games work. So what have you unlocked by the end of Grand Theft Auto 3? How does the game reward your time spent? Well, you unlock a myriad of guns, fast cars, some slow-ass boats, although getting in the boats is difficult. You can't swim in Grand Theft Auto 3. There are no helicopters, no planes. Except for the dodo, which you're sorta not supposed to be able to fly. Like, when you crash into the ground, the game gives you a participation ribbon in the form of a little message about how long you flew. But if you get really good, you can fly to the ghost town that is hidden in the game. This is the area that the opening cutscene took place in, and don't tell anybody I told you. They've got my dog tied up in a warehouse somewhere. With the exception of a tank, which is sick, the tools Grand Theft Auto 3 gives the player aren't that excessive. They're actually pretty typical. While the story communicates that you've become top dog of this world, the gameplay fails to reward you that well because it's from 2001. Jetpacks, attack helicopters, military jets. These big, shiny toys that modern sandboxes toss out are, a pain in the ass to design and implement into the game. Is it fair for me to hold GTA 3 up against modern games that were inspired by it, and say that GTA 3 fails to supply the player with sufficiently shiny toys? No, that's not fair. But neither is life. It's boring. I'm really bored when I play Grand Theft Auto 3. But what about its missions? Modern Rockstar games are notoriously linear and handholdy. They sacrifice player freedom at the altar of cinematic storytelling. In the Wild West of 2001, did Rockstar have a more non-linear approach to their mission design? Has modern, hand-holdy bullshit replaced freedom of player expression? In this mission, you need to bait some cartel members into a trap set by the Yakuza. You shoot the cars yourself? Mission failed, fucko. Maybe follow the directions next time? Your car gets wrecked and blows up the cartel car by complete accident? Nerd. The cartel AI gets itself stuck because cars are real complicated. You gotta do the pedal thing and the wheel thing. It's just too much. Well, have fun trying to unjam the fucking thing, only to have it flip over and have you fail the mission anyway. Rockstar is never nonlinear on purpose. If you watched a particular Nakey Jakey video, you may have a false idea of what Grand Theft Auto 3 is. It is not some Breath of the Wild-esque sandbox where you can solve problems however you choose. It is nearly as restrictive as modern Rockstar games. With the exception of a few oversights, you do not get to show off your creative problem-solving skills in these missions, as if it was a game. No, instead you show off your reading comprehension. The Rockstar problem of total sandbox freedom existing only until you start a mission is still very much here. GTA 3 was not developed by a stadium full of suicidal and overworked developers like Rockstar's modern titles. It was instead developed by a close-knit group of suicidal and overworked developers. So there is less scripting, but make no mistake, 90% of these missions have an A, B, and C, and God help you if you do these things in the wrong order or wrong way. The worst part is the game is very bad about informing the player of what the wrong way is. In this mission, I had to destroy an ambulance before it got to the police station. This had proved troublesome because I'm bad at video games, so I thought, naturally, the tank blows up everything on contact and is really the only fun vehicle the game gives you. So I blew up the ambulance instantly with my big brain move, and it was a decoy. I don't remember the mission being like this. Decoy, yeah, you get it. I went back with another car and did it the way Rockstar wanted. There was no decoy, and I had to blow up the guy anyway, so... Come on! A game is a list of rules. At no point in... let me just pick a random game out of my Steam library. Doom Eternal, I haven't talked about that one in a while. At no point in Doom Eternal does it say, Objective! Use the Flame Belch! Do it! Do it now! The Flame Belch gives you armor. It is another tool in your arsenal. It is utilized organically by the player when needed, and if not, they die. So death feels fair. But the point is, the rules are set up in such a way that you have to use it, but you get to choose when and how. That's a game. You need to score more points than the other team to win. How you score those points is up to you. That's the fun part. The biggest fault in all of the Grand Theft Auto games is the fact that while the open world operates on a set of rules, like a game, and I don't want to seem biased, but I do like games. The missions in Grand Theft Auto don't feel like a game. The missions feel like playable movies, which is one of those things that sounds cool in theory, but sucks in practice, like Twitter, or flying on a plane, or literally every economic system that has ever existed. Just insert the one that you think does not work here. None of them work, they suck. The reason Rockstar's modern games maintain such a vice-like grip on the player during missions is for story purposes. This results in the missions, at their worst, feeling like you're not controlling a character in a game, but instead an actor in a scene going through the stage directions.
Now I'm here, okay? I'm past where I thought I could go.
It's a trade-off, made for the story and presentation, and while I definitely am not a huge fan of this trade-off, these stories are usually pretty engaging. Some of them are my favorite video game stories ever. But what about the story in Grand Theft Auto 3? You play as Claude Speed, presumably because Rockstar decided the name Thunderdick Curbstomp would be a bit much. But his name was only learned in 2004, as he makes a cameo in San Andreas, and it's mentioned there. In the entirety of Grand Theft Auto 3, his name is never said. This is because Claude is actually a silent protagonist. Now, there's nothing inherently wrong with a silent protagonist. Do you want to unpack that sentence, or should I? Portal, Half-Life, Doom, some of my favorite franchises have strong but silent main characters. It's another trade-off. The player can more easily fill the shoes of these characters at the cost of, well, your protagonist not having a character. Now, one thing to be noted about all of these games is the fact that they're also all in first person. You don't constantly have to see these characters, so you just sort of buy into the fantasy. You're the character, you are their eyes. Grand Theft Auto 3 is third person, of course, so the whole silent protagonist thing feels weird. And after nearly 2 decades of memorable Grand Theft Auto protagonists, it does feel like a missed opportunity to add some amount of emotional weight or at least personality to the game. Take this mission for example, Waka Gashira Wipeout. In this mission, Donald Love asks Claude to kill the boss of the Yakuza. Now, we only know 2 things about Donald Love. Number 1, he's a necrophiliac. Totally forgivable. I'm a man of God, and believe that all of God's children are able to repent and accept the Lord and Savior into their life. Number 2, he's rich. Never mind, fuck this guy. Now the boss of the Yakuza is the brother of Asuka, a woman that literally saved Claude's life earlier. So how does Claude feel about killing him? How does he feel about betraying the woman that saved his life? How does he feel about doing the bidding of a monstrous rich asshole? There is absolutely a place for a silent protagonist. I despise the inclusion of a voiced protagonist in Fallout 4, but in a linear third-person story, I think it's the right choice. And the biggest problem with this is that GTA 3's story is all about Claude getting revenge on the woman that backstabbed him in the bank heist. Betraying Claude is like betraying drywall. Like, I don't care. And I'm pretty sure the drywall doesn't care either. The story of Half-Life is not about Gordon. It's about the Black Mesa incident and the ensuing cover-up. The story of Doom isn't about the Slayer. It's about Hell invading Mars or Earth. The story of Portal is not about Shell. It's about Aperture Science and GLaDOS. The story of Grand Theft Auto 3 all revolves around a character that doesn't exist. I feel my harping on about video game stories can come across as pretentious, so I want to clarify why that's a dead horse I will not stop beating. Games don't need to be Hamlet. This is Grand Theft Auto, I understand. But I, as a player, need to care. Make me give a shit about what is happening in front of me. By all means, go further than that, but that's the bar to clear. And holy shit, does GTA 3 not succeed when it comes to that? This is every cutscene that precedes a mission. Ah, just the man I wanted to see. While the feds have seized my assets, I have managed to squirrel away 10 million in cash. How did I do this, you may ask? Well, as you know, I own several hospitals, and have had the nurses in the maternity ward surgically insert bearer bonds into over 100 different infants. I need you to find the infants, tear them out of the arms of their weeping mothers, cut them open, then return the bonds to me. I was told you were a man that could get things done. I do hope this isn't beyond you. You don't have any sort of an issue with the infanticide? I'm asking you to commit infanticide 100 times. No reaction. You're good with that. Yeah, god damn, you're good. Grand Theft Auto 3 isn't fun. The game has a severe lack of fun vehicles, the map itself is gray and lifeless, the story is about as exciting as that Divergent book that I read in high school. Why the fuck did I read that? And even the radio, which usually defines the feel of a Grand Theft Auto game, is filled with super cheap to license trash. Some of it sounds like elevator music. Grand Theft Auto 3 is important. It was one of the most controversial, influential, cutting-edge games of its time, but Ramblime is a cool YouTuber that you should really check out. In a recent video, he talked about a Fallout mod called Alton, Illinois. It's a pretty fascinating and impressive mod. It's a total conversion mod for Fallout 3, made by a 17-year-old kid. I don't mean the 17-year-old was sexually groomed by one of several authors behind the mod and just made a suggestion at some point. I mean, it was single-handedly made by a 17-year-old. A 17-year-old made a total conversion mod of Fallout 3 with factions and dialogue trees and an open world and all the normal Fallout stuff. Is another way of saying a 17-year-old made a terrible mod. Ramblime destroys it with facts and logic, like the true libtard mod it is. Ramblime is notoriously conservative. He's basically Ben Shapiro, and I know he'll be super happy to hear that comparison. The dialogue was recorded by the mod author, once again, a teenager, on what sounds like his laptop microphone.
Aren't you a bit scrawny for this job?
It's not good. It couldn't be. It was inevitably going to be bad. What the fuck else could it be? It's unfair to expect anything more. It's insane to expect anything more. Grand Theft Auto is defined by excess. No game from 2001 is excessive. They can't be. The budgets weren't big enough. The hardware wasn't powerful enough. GTA 3 was always going to be a small game by modern standards. It was always going to make mistakes. It wasn't iterating upon established industry standards. It was a bold move from its much smaller 2D predecessors. The switch from 2D to 3D is massive. Mistakes were going to be made. Corners were going to be cut. Grand Theft Auto 3 was made in 2001. Is another way of saying Grand Theft Auto 3 is bad. It's not that older games are inevitably destined to be bad, obviously, and many of my favorite games come from way before my time. It's that older games are inevitably going to be small, or at least spread super thin, and Grand Theft Auto can't be small. I often appreciate older games for having a tighter focus on what it is they're trying to be, but what Grand Theft Auto wants to be is over the top. Because when Grand Theft Auto is not over the top, it's not fun. I could barely bring myself to play Grand Theft Auto 3. And as I'm sure you've noticed from my dropping of little details and the fact that I turned the cannon on the tank around to go faster, that's another little pro game strat for you. I know this game. It is burned into my frontal lobe. I know everything. I know every secret. I know how to fly the unflyable plane. I know how to go to all the places you were not supposed to go. I love Grand Theft Auto 3. I don't want to be mean. I want to give it a pat on the back and praise it from top to bottom. That's what I expected to do when I started this video, but as I kept playing, it became clear that wasn't gonna happen. Ramblime destroyed Alton, Illinois. Not in a shitty way, not in an edgy gamer way. He took it apart and explained what did not work, and nothing did, because how could it? He's a cold, clinical, calm, and rational, conservative YouTuber who does not let feelings get in the way of the facts. The mod author of Alton, Illinois, as I'm sure you can guess by his work, is very ambitious. He did not stop, and is currently working on a seemingly even more ambitious and very interesting looking Fallout 4 total conversion mod called A Better World. We all start somewhere. Alton, Illinois was never going to be good. The circumstances surrounding its creation prevented that from even being a possibility, and to give it a pat on the back and an attaboy helps no one. But while Alton, Illinois was never going to be good, A Better World can be. It'll certainly be better. A Better World only has a chance to be good because Alton, Illinois was bad. Grand Theft Auto 3 was not bad when it released, but with the benefit of hindsight, it's clear what it really was. A foundation. And a foundation is as vital as it is uninteresting. Grand Theft Auto as a franchise has become an absolute monolith. Such a monolith that it's easy to forget this is a fantastic concept. An open world crime sandbox. Oh yeah, we've seen plenty of those. But in a world where such a thing had yet to exist, that's a billion-dollar idea. Many billions, actually. But Grand Theft Auto 3 did not do this concept justice, due to the circumstances of its creation. I could go on and on about how sure it's bad now, but it was great at the time. But I want to show the evolution of Grand Theft Auto. How can I do that without showing what happened when it first began to walk on 2 feet? It's important that it be understood that Grand Theft Auto 3 was a poor execution of the crime sandbox concept, and while yes, it did impress in 2001, to say the least, it impressed through how novel it was. The concept alone is exciting, but a 10-year-old could suggest improvements to this game. Add a real plane, helicopters, motorcycles, the ability to swim, the ability to shoot out tires, the ability to do sick burnouts. It's a game about driving and doing crimes, for Christ's sake. More guns, more explosions, more polygons on the women that are supposed to be love interests because, holy shit, bitches from the burn ward be all over Claude. Grand Theft Auto 3 spawned endless imitators. Where open world games used to be a rarity, in the wake of Grand Theft Auto 3, they became commonplace. And oddly similar. Grand Theft Auto 3 is a unique game because it created a trophy for the industry to clamor for. That trophy being Best Crime Sandbox. And yet, it was also a pretty poor execution of such an idea. The best ways to improve on GTA 3 were numerous and obvious. Do this, but bigger, and that trophy is yours. No game is easy to make, but this design document sure as hell writes itself. The clock was ticking, blood was in the water, and Rockstar rushed, trying to prove that they alone deserved the trophy that they had just created. Only 1 year and 5 days after the release of Grand Theft Auto 3, Rockstar released a game that they hoped would, as I will detail in my next video, cement them as the true kingpins of the crime sandbox.